So what you're looking at right now is the login screen for AMS. And in order to get access to the application management system, you need to have certain security rights. So for instance, if you have the application security role, then you can log into AMS and create applications as well as execute the planning tool where you can plan for your oil and gas activities before creating an application. The other security right that you could obtain for your user is surveyor role. So what that means is you have access to the planning tool, which allows you to upload spatial data and plan where you would like to have your oil and gas activities, but you won't be able to create an application. So the surveyor role right is predominantly for your surveyors so they can play with the planning tool and upload the spatial data before sending these the spatial package to the land agent, for instance, to start the application. So those are the two security roles that you can have for the system and how you would log into the system. So I'm just going to log into the system now. The user that I'm using has the application security role. So when you log into the system, you will be presented with the dashboard, and you have the two functionalities at the top here, create application and the application analysis tool. The profile on the right-hand side gives all the information based on the information for your logged in user that's in the corporate registry. So it just gives you a quick snapshot. If you notice that any of this information here is incorrect, then please get in touch with the corporate registry team to get that information updated. AMS does not provide the functionality for you to edit any of the information that you see pulled in from here. On the top very right-hand corner, you'll see the dashboard icon. At any point in time, you can click on this dashboard icon and it would take you back to this home page here. And then it gives you your logged in user and then the logout functionality in the top right-hand corner. So on this dashboard here, it shows all of the applications that have been created in the system for the proponents you have access to. So for instance, if you have the application security role for multiple proponents, you'll see all the applications that have been created for that proponent on your dashboard. In this example here, I'm logged in as training account 1, and I only have access to create applications on behalf of BTS Oil and Gas Company. So at this time, I'm looking at all of the applications that have been created for BTS Oil and Gas Company here. How the information is organized on the dashboard for you, on the starting from the left side, you see these icons here. And these icons denote that there's a spatial aspect to this application. And this means that spatial data has been uploaded for this application. And when you click on the icon here, a pop-up will be displayed and you can see the spatial data that has been uploaded for that particular application. So as this is loading now, you're going to see, and this application here was for a new OGA, and you had multiple activities here. So once this loads, you're going to see that spatial data. While that's loading, I'll just move along here. So the next column on the dashboard is the application number. So here you're going to see it's a link, and when you click on the application number, it will bring you to the application. Sorry, just taking time to load. The next column on the dashboard is a revision number. So anytime an application has gone through multiple revisions, you'll see the number incremented by 1 each time the application has gone through a revision. The third column on the dashboard is the application type. So here you'll see either new OGA or new NEB related or an amendment are some examples of the application type. The fourth column is the application status. So here, as you hover over the icon, it will describe what the application status is. So in these cases, all three of these applications have the application status of in progress and draft. So anytime you see a different icon, for instance, if you just hover over the icon, it will describe what the application status currently is. The next column is the activity identifier. So it describes all of the activities that were selected as part of the application. So in this instance, we have a new OGA application and all of the activities were selected, and it's described in this column for you. And then the last column is the proponent. So I'm just going to flip back to the map here. So this is what has been uploaded for this particular application. So just a quick review of what we just covered. When you first log into the system, you'll be presented to the dashboard. You can return back to this page at any time by clicking on the dashboard icon on the top right-hand corner. The information laid out on the screen is by application number, revision number, and so on and so forth. By clicking on the globe on the on the left-hand side here, a pop-up will be presented, and you can see all of the the spatial data that has been uploaded for this application. If you do not see a globe here, that means spatial data has not yet been uploaded. By clicking on the application number, you'll be brought into the application, and you can work on the particular details of that application. And then the fields at the top the fields for each column will allow you to do a dynamic compound search. So what that means is if you wanted to search one column, you can by inputting the number. So let's say, for instance, we wanted to bring up this last guy here. So I'm just going to type in the last 4 digits. The system will refresh and display what I've inputted here. And that's just a simple search. But if I wanted to do a search using multiple columns, I can do that as well. So for instance, if I wanted to narrow my results to, let's show me only NEB applications. And then if I wanted to further drill down my results, I would just put in pipeline, for instance. It won't refresh to show narrow down results because these two applications have pipeline in it, but you're able to do a compound search by inputting the different types of information in each column there. Okay, so what we've covered so far is how you log into the system, the 2 different types of security roles, and how to navigate on the dashboard. We're now going to go into the application analysis tool, and this tool will provide you the ability to plan for oil and gas activities before creating an application. And before we jump into this application analysis tool function, any questions so far? Okay. So the application analysis tool, the information is laid out in 3 sections here. So the very top left box you see is upload spatial data, and this box will provide you the ability to upload spatial data. The right box here is download shapefile templates. So this gives you the ability to download any of the templates that you require for whatever type of application that you need. So for instance, if I needed to know, okay, what do I need to provide as part of a new NEB pipeline application, I could download the shapefile templates, indicate the type of application that I require it for, and then this way you'll see all of the shapes that I could potentially include, and then as well as the specific attributes that are required for me to include in my shapefile to get it validated into the system. So that's download shapefile templates. Once you upload spatial data in this box right here, it's going to populate in the application analysis section. So this gives you the ability to play with this shapefile. So we'll first upload a shapefile here so you can see it in action. the first step when you upload any shapefile in the system is to provide the shapefile projection. So in this case, I've selected the BC Albers projection. I'm going to select Upload Shapefile. And then I'm just going to locate where my shapefiles are. In this example, I've just selected a well area and a well point. And once I've uploaded here, I have a successful message displayed on the top right-hand corner for me, and then it's also populated as an additional row in the application analysis tool section. So here, very similar to the dashboard, you have different columns describing what the shapefile is. So you have your uploaded date, the shapefile name, the different types of tools that you can use for that specific shapefile. And then once you validate the shapefile, the application type and the activity will be populated for you right there. So here, if I wanted to see the map and see what the shapefile looks like on the map, I can click on this globe. So again, it's very consistent to what you see on the dashboard. So by clicking on this globe here, you're going to see a pop-up and it's going to load in the map for you. I'll let that guy load. And then the next icon is a report. So by clicking on this, you can see the you're executing the spatial overlay engine report, which provides all of the impacted lands that the shapefile overlaps. So I'm just gonna, so here's the map. As you can see here, I've uploaded a well area and my well point there. And then this guy here is the report. So while it's generating, it's going to provide a PDF report and it's going to identify all of the impacted lands. So this gives you an overview of how much potentially consultation you'll have to complete as part of the application if you wanted to proceed with an application based on the shapefile that you've uploaded. So this gives you all the information that's required. So let's say based on the location you've uploaded your shapefile and it impacts 15 First Nations, for instance. By uploading another shapefile and moving the well location over a little bit and running the report and seeing that you now only impact 10 First Nations, for instance, you might want to go forward with the application for the second shapefile instead of the first one. So that's really the benefits of using the application analysis tool, is to allow and give you the opportunity to play with where the shapefile locations could be by running this report here. Then when you decide that, okay, this is where you'd like to proceed with your application, you can validate. So by clicking on validate here, you have to select your application type so the system knows what you're trying to create the application for. So in this case, it's for a well application. So I've selected New Oga and I'm going to select well here. And at this point, the system gives me a successful message indicating that the shapefile has been validated successfully. And I'm presented with the green check mark here as well. And at this point, the system has validated that my shapefile that I've included is correct for the application type and activity that I've selected, as well as has all of the necessary attributes in my shapefile that the system requires. And then now my application type and activity have been populated for me. I'll run through an example where the validation is unsuccessful. So let's do the same shapefile again. but this time I'm going to select a different activity. So let's say pipeline, for instance. At this point, the system shows you an error message saying that the shapefile that you uploaded is not allowed for the current application and the activity type selected. And then I'm presented with a red icon here denoting that the shapefile that I've uploaded for this application is incorrect. So I noticed that there was one question here. Will the LAT tool identify any archaeological concerns? This is a GIS related question. I think we might have to table this, and then we will get back to this question after the session. We'll follow up with some correspondence.
Tammy, can I just jump in for a moment?
Yeah, of course.
This is Donna from the Fort St. John office. I just wanted to explain that users cannot submit both an NEB and an OG application at the same time. It has to be one or the other.
Okay, so if nobody has any other questions, I'll just do a quick summary of what we've covered so far, and then the next step is we'll look at how to create an application. And just to echo Donna's thoughts there, I will show an example of a new OGA application as well as a new NEB application and how these two application types are mutually exclusive. So I'll show those as an example as well. So from here, what we've seen so far is how the information is organized in the application analysis tool. You have on the left box here the area where you upload your spatial data, and consistent to what you'll see later on in the system, the steps are always step 1, select your shapefile projection, step 2, locate your shapefile, and then upload. So that's this box here. The right-hand box is download shapefile template. So this gives you the ability to download the applicable templates for the application type and activity you'd like to submit to the OGC. And what it is included in the shapefile templates are specific attributes that are required in the shapefile in order for the shapefile to be validated successfully in the application. We won't be going into the details there, but the functionality is presented here for you. The box on the bottom here is the application analysis section, where it gives you the ability to play with what shapefile you've uploaded so far. So you can click on the map, and this will give you a pop-up, and you can view what shapefile you've uploaded. You can run a report, which will identify all of the impacted lands. So this gives you information and helps you plan where you want to put your oil and gas activities before committing to creating an application. Once you've uploaded the shapefiles, you can validate the application, and once the shapefile is validated successfully, you can then create an application from here. And the next example is to create an application from the dashboard. So the difference between creating an application from the application analysis tool versus creating an application from the dashboard is the point in which you upload your spatial. So as you can see here, I've uploaded my shapefile first, I validated, and then I'm going to create my application. So here, you'll see these 3 steps. So your first step is always indicating the application type and the activity. So in this case, it's already pre-populated for me because I indicated the application type and activity while I was validating my shapefile, so I don't need to complete step 1. Step 2 is selecting the proponent. So in this case, again, it ties back to the security rights you have for your user, and I have the application security role for BTS Oil and Gas Company, so that is the only proponent that I can select. If you're a land agent for multiple proponents and you have the application application security rule for multiple proponents, all of the proponents will be displayed in the drop-down for you to select. So that's the second step. The third step is providing an application description. It is optional. However, it is highly recommended that you do provide some sort of description, as this helps facilitate the review process. So providing some sort of description here, and accepting the legal disclaimer here. So when you're creating an application, you always need to follow these 3 steps. And then once you hit OK, the system will bring you into the application details for the application you just created. We'll go into the details in this once we go over the scenario when you're creating the application from the dashboard. But that is basically how you create an application from the application analysis tool. And then here, if you return back, you now see your application number displayed here. So you know that the shapefile that you've uploaded for this guy has been used to create an application. So another thing to note as well, based on your security rights, you might not have that functionality. So as mentioned earlier, if you have the application security role, you can create applications. However, if you only have the surveyor role, you only have the ability to validate if the shapefile is correct, but you cannot create an application. So for those of you in our session today, depending on the security access that you have, you might not have this functionality. All right, so that's just an overview of how the application analysis tool works. I'm going to click back onto the dashboard here, and we're now going to look at creating an application directly from the dashboard. So similarly, what we saw here, when you're creating an application, you do have to complete 3 steps. And notice the difference in the application analysis tool. This first step was already done for me because I already uploaded my shapefile and I validated it. When you're creating an application from the dashboard, you haven't uploaded any shapefiles yet, so you do have to complete step 1 here. So I'm going to create a new NEB related application type. And as you can see, and just echoing Donna's note there, new NEB and new OGA are mutually exclusive, so you cannot create a combination of both. It's one or the other. And then also, if you were to create, let's say you started a new NEB related and you selected pipeline right of way, but then it turns out that you should have done a new OGA application and selected pipeline. Once you've created the application already, in order to change back to the correct application type, you do have to discard your application and start from the beginning. There's no way once you've created the application to switch in the middle. So I'll show you, that'll make more sense as we go through the steps, but that's just the point here, that these 2 application types are separated. So I'm going to select new NEB related as the application type and select pipeline right of way. Again, the second step here is selecting the proponent. And all this information is pulled in from the corporate registry. I can't edit it, but it's displayed here for me. And then the third step is providing an application description. So here you get a quick summary of what you've selected so far. So in this case, I've selected new NEB related application for this proponent, and I've selected the pipeline right of way as my activity. And just a quick description here. And then I'm going to select the I agree for the application disclaimer and click next. So notice here, at this point, I haven't uploaded any shapefiles at all. So the tabs aren't enabled for me yet because this system will generate and pre-populate what's required for the application based on the shapefile. So because I haven't uploaded anything yet, none of these tabs are enabled for me. But on the left-hand side, what you'll see here is at this point, I've already created my application number. I have the status as draft application and just some of the pertinent details of my application here. So the application type, the revision number, the proponent, and created date. If I click on overview here, the same information is populated. I do have more information about the proponent. I have the ability to add and remove activity types. And again, because I haven't uploaded spatial data, a lot of the fields aren't populated for me yet. But just to echo here, at this point, if I've created this application number already and realize at this point that it should have been a new OGA application, my options are either discarding this application by clicking on the left application menu here and selecting discard, or just returning back to the dashboard and creating the application again, but selecting new OGA. So as you can see here, you can't really change the application type once you've selected it. So I'm just going to go to the spatial, and I'm going to locate the file that I'm going to upload. So I get a quick message at the top right-hand corner saying that the shapefile was uploaded and validated successfully. Notice now that the tabs are enabled for me as well. And you're going to see these icons throughout the system. So what this means at this point is the system is running the spatial analysis and will compute the fields for you and pre-populate it for you as well. So anytime that you see a green globe, that means this field was spatially derived for you and pre-populated for you based on the shapefile that you've uploaded. And then it gives you the opportunity to review how the system populated that information for you. So you'll see that throughout here. So anytime you see a green globe, that means that this value was spatially derived for you and populated into the system for you. Okay, so what we've done so far is we created a new NEB application for pipeline right-of-way, uploaded the pipeline right-of-way shapefile, and what we've seen so far is how the system computes the application requirements based on the shapefile that was uploaded. And then you can see by the green globes here that most of these fields are populated into the system based on the shapefile that I've uploaded here. We'll go into more detail in the next scenario, but that's just as an overview how you create a new NEB application. So just do a new OGA application this time around. Again, by selecting the application type, I'm going to select new OGA, and I'm going to select well in this case. Second step is the proponent. Third step is the application description, accepting the disclaimer, and then uploading the shapefile. Again, you're going to get a message at the top here saying that the shapefile was validated and saved successfully. And similarly, you're going to see all of you're going to see the system doing its thing where it's calculating all the spatially derived fields for you, and then it will populate into the system for you. So just to recap, how you create an application from the dashboard or from the application analysis tool, you always have to do 3 steps. The first step is indicating the application type and the activity. The second step is indicating the proponent. And then the third step is providing an application description and accepting the application disclaimer. depending on where you're creating the application, if you're creating the application from the application analysis tool, you don't have to upload spatial once you've created your application package, because you've done that step up front and you've already validated up front. If you're creating the application from the dashboard, once you created the once you've gone through the 3 steps, you do have to upload your spatial file. So that's the main difference between creating an application from the application analysis tool versus directly from the dashboard. And then in both cases, once you've uploaded your shapefile, what the system will do is it's going to pre-populate that into the system and identify which what requirements which tabs are required for your application. So in this case, we're looking at a new land application for a well, and all of these tabs are enabled for me, and it's pre-populated for me based on the shapefile as well. If, for example, I was doing a subsequent well and it was a no new land, or it was a well on permissioned area, these tabs won't be required for me. And by clicking on it, the system will show you a message indicating that the certain tab would not be required. So that's how you upload spatial data and how the values are then populated into the system. Before we move on, I see a question here. Can the surveyors come in to upload a shapefile to the application once it has been created, or can they only use the application analysis tool? It depends how they've been set up. If the surveyor has been set up with application security role, then they can upload it when they're creating the application, and then whoever, the land agent or whoever, can go in and complete the application. If the surveyor only has the surveyor role, though, they can only do that. They can only do that through the application analysis tool. So before I continue and go and discuss how the numbering system works and how these are impacted by the spatial data, I'm going to flip this over to Donna, actually, and she's going to discuss the importance of communication between parties.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Yeah, we just wanted to talk about communication. It is really important with this that there's good communication between land agents, companies, and surveyors. Some of the service desk requests we get there, it's evident that there is some misunderstanding between what the requirements are, especially now that the shapefiles have attribute information in them. So surveyors do need to know that those attribute informations in order to prepare those shapefiles properly. We've heard some companies prepare templates that the surveyors can give out and say, this is the information we need. The company fills that out and gives that back to the surveyor. Something you might want to consider. Back to you, Tammy.
Thanks, Donna. All right, so I'm just going to go over how the numbering system works and how these numbers are impacted by spatial data. This also includes revisions as well. So I'll provide a brief description on how this works, and then Donna may jump in and add in some further information as required here. So Donna, feel free to jump in whenever you feel makes sense. So in this case, we've uploaded a shapefile for a new OGA and a well application. And as you can see here, it's organized by a land area number. So in the case where, let's say I had 2 well pads and I had on each pad 10 wells on it, the system would display 2 land area numbers, and each land area number will describe is to identify the well pad. And in this case, there's only one. So we have one land area number here, and you only see it on the left-hand side here. And in this case, I have one WA number. Every time you upload spatial data, the system will generate new activity identifiers. So I'll show this as an example. So note that in this case, I've uploaded my spatial package once, and my WA number is 33932. Let's say, for instance, I messed up the shapefile and I need to move it, or something's wrong with it and I need to upload a new package. I'm going to find that package and validate and save. So at this point, the system's just validating and saving this application and including it in the spatial submission upload history here. And if I were to go back, I've received a new land area number. And as you can see here, my WA number has also changed. So the numbering system, every time you upload spatial data, the system identifies all of the activities as part of your application and assigns the activity identifiers for you. In cases where you have to re-upload for whatever reason, let's say it's incorrect or you need to move it a little bit, you will have to upload new spatial, and the system will generate a new set of activity identifiers for you. I'm going to return back to the dashboard and show an example with multiple activities. You can see it. In this case, the well and facility share a land area number. So what that means is it's one polygon that has a well and a facility. So if I click on this, I have one land area number. You can see here 4393 is the last 4 digits. Now if I were to scroll down, I have 6 wells in this area. If I were to click on the facility, I have 2 facilities on this area. So by seeing the 2 land area numbers the same, it denotes that on this polygon, I have both well and facilities located on there. And I'm just going to click through these activities here. So for associated oil and gas activity, the system generates an AYOGA number, and it's displayed here. So an AYOGA number will be generated for each ancillary polygon that's uploaded. So in this scenario, I uploaded 3 associated oil and gas polygons, and as a result, I have 3 AYOGA numbers generated. For changes in about a stream, there is an there's an umbrella changes in about a stream number that is generated here. And then you have the stream impact location IDs at the bottom here. So just one question here. Do AYOGA numbers serve the same purpose as the legacy OGC numbers? Donna, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So no, the simple answer is no. We have legacy OGC numbers. They are now, just legacy numbers. These AYOGA numbers, changes in and about a stream numbers, the overarching number that Tammy was talking about, we are referring to these as activity identifiers. So every activity has an activity identifier number. For a well, that would be a well authorization number. For a pipeline, that would be a pipeline project number. For associated oil and gas activities, it's an AYOGA number. For a road, it's a road number. Geophysical, it is a geophysical, a geoprogram number. So these are the activity identifier numbers. And what Tammy is explaining right now about when you upload a new shape file, it's important to also recognize that this happens on applications that are in progress or revisions prior to approval of an application. So once this application gets submitted and approved, those numbers are then, locked down. If you submit an amendment and you have to upload new shapefiles, it will not change those numbers. It's only prior to approval that this happens. But the important piece is that when you start your application, you get those activity identifier numbers, you submit the application, it's going through the review, needs to be revised, so it goes back to in revision and you upload new shapefiles, you will get new numbers at that point. So really important not to, rely on those numbers until the application has been approved. Any questions? Okay, Tammy, back to you.
Thanks, Donna. So we went over AOGA numbers, changes in about a stream number, and Donna also reviewed the geophysical program number, the pipeline project number. We have the short-term water use number as well, so it's similar to the changes about a stream where it's your umbrella number that is used to reference all of the different points of diversion that's included as part of the short-term water use number. And then you also have your road number as well. So just as an overview, every time you upload spatial, it will generate new activity identifiers. If for some reason your application needs to go back to, needs to be revised, let's say you don't upload spatial data, then the business or the activity identifiers that you have won't change. So it doesn't matter if your application has gone to in revision. If you haven't uploaded spatial data, the activity identifiers will remain the same. If, however, the application has gone to in revision and you have uploaded new spatial data, then in that scenario, you will have new activity identifiers. So just a quick question here. AMS, going back to the beginning quickly, you mentioned that AMS doesn't have the functionality to edit user information. Where would one make changes to this now? So all of the user information is managed in the corporate registry. We can provide correspondence on how you would contact the corporate registry team to get that updated. But yes, it's managed through the corporate registry, and we can provide that information on how you would contact them to get that information updated. Okay, so what we covered so far is just the importance of communication between parties and how the numbering system works and how this numbering system is impacted by when you upload spatial data. The next piece that we're going to go over is using documentation information references for engagement. And with that, I'll pass it over to Donna.
Documentation information for references for engagement. Yeah, this kind of just ties into the numbering system. So one of the benefits of our system is that industry can upload their spatial data into the application analysis tool. They can run a report. They can identify all impacted parties and anything that their application is in conflict with. If they, look at that and kind of go, I don't want to have my application here, or I might want to change it, they have the ability to play around with their shapefile until they get to the point where they know where they want that application to be. Then they, upload it again in the application analysis tool, run their report, and from that they can do their engagement, whether that's with First Nations communities, landowners, stakeholders, whoever. When you are doing your engagement, we recommend that you use the application number. For example, the one on the screen is 110-3000. That's what we recommend that you use in those references. Don't use the activity identifier numbers because of the reasons that Tammy just explained. If you upload spatial data and it overwrites those numbers, now those numbers are no longer valid, and your engagement references would contain the incorrect information. So we to use the application number instead. Any questions? Back to you, Tammy.
Thanks, Donna. Okay, so we're now going to just through the application itself, and then how to save, validate, submit, and print applications. So on the left-hand side of your application here, you have the application header information. So we kind of went over this briefly before. You have your application number. That's always the biggest number that you see on the left-hand side here. You have the application status, which is the second row beneath that. And then it just has some pertinent details of the application here. So your type, your revision number, the proponent, and the created date. So this is considered the application header information. Below there, you have the section overview, activity information, and application information. So the overview provides a quick picture of the application type and the application number. And then it also gives the proponent information as well as some contact information. So it's pretty critical that you do provide a proponent contact name. This helps the review staff when reviewing applications. They would know who to contact if they had any questions about the application. So the overview tab gives information about the proponent, who to contact, all the activities selected for the application, the application description that was inputted when creating the application, and then the operational zones for the application itself. So that's the overview. Below there is the activity information, and then lastly, the application information. So based on the activities you've selected for the application, it's going to be organized in this section for you. And then once you click on an activity here, the tabs going across are consistent based on the shapefile that you've uploaded. So what does that mean? That means the first tab you're always going to see is some sort of activity overview. So this provides, this is just a general section that has all the information required for that particular project or polygon. So for instance, my well overview is for this particular land area number. The next tab is the activity details. So this gives you specific details for each activity within that polygon. So in this case, this well details tab I have highlighted for this particular WA number, and the 4 panels that I need to complete for them includes my well specifications, well hazard planning, flaring, and exemptions. So the the activity details tab really is the specific technical information required for the particular activity. And then the third tab is the activity land details tab. So this, you'll only see this tab if it applies based on the shapefile that you've uploaded. So how do you go into the activity overview tab, and you're going to see a field labeled as area type. And if this area type is indicated as new land, that means that new area is required, and as such, you're going to see the well land details tab here populated. For an example, if you're submitting an application for a subsequent well on permissioned area, when you click well overview here, based on the shapefile that you've uploaded, it would say area type permission land, and you won't see the well land details here. So consistently, whenever you're clicking on the activities, you're going to see those 3 tabs. You're going to have an activity overview and then particular land details. So if you're going to see here as well, you have your activity overview and then your activity details. So that's your activity information section on the left-hand panel for you. And then the third section is the application information section. So when you click on application information, you're going to be presented with tabs going across here. And these are all the sections that are required for your application. So the first tab is the administrative tab, and this is the section where you would indicate the companies or the contacts that would be company representatives for your particular application. So for example, if I'm going to input John. Again, this is pulled in from the corporate registry, and I'm going to locate the contact here, and Brad Johnston is going to be my drilling engineer, and then I'm going to add some description here. And then this information is now pulled in. So that's the administrative tab. So this first tab that you're looking at is to indicate all of the company representatives that are required for your particular application. At minimum, one company representative is required for your application, but this is where you would input all of the engineers and archaeologists or whoever is required to complete your application here. And just as a note as well, based on the particular types that you include, there may or may not be a professional reliance email sent out for these individuals. So that's why it's important to ensure that the email in the corporate registry is up to date for the particular individuals you're adding as your engineers or your archaeologists as part of your application is up to date and correct. Just going to save there. We'll go over save and validating shortly, but I'll just go over the tabs first. Just going to flip. We have one more question. Can you provide a link to a map or description of the OGC areas? Doreen Johnson, what do you mean by OGC areas? Are you operational zones? Right. Yeah, so the operational zones. I think the OGC operations describe what those operational zones are. We can provide a link to where you can get that information and what that information means after the session for you, Doreen. Is that okay? All right. So the second tab here is the land tab. So again, this land tab and all of the land, forestry, and stewardship tabs in particular. Based on the shapefile that you're uploading, if new land has been identified for your application, these tabs will be enabled for you. A lot of it is pre-populated based on the shapefiles, but this information is just highlighted there for you and spatially derived for you as well. And if based on a shapefile that you've uploaded, it was indicated that you don't need new land and it's all on permissioned land, when you click on these tabs, the system will just show a note saying that this tab is not required for you. All right, so we went through land, forestry, stewardship. We also have agriculture as well. So again, this is spatially computed for you, and then you would just go and go through the fields and indicate what's required there. Same with archaeology, consultation and notification. You have your First Nations as well, and maps and plans. The last section is attachments. So what I'll go through is, so we just went over how the system, how you would navigate through the application. So just as a quick recap, you have your application header on the left-hand side. This gray panel, I like to refer to it as your navigation panel. It's always available to you no matter which section you are in the application. So it gives you a quick recap and you can click through to where you need to go. So this is considered your navigation panel. How it's organized in 3 sections. You have your overview, which provides the proponent information, a quick snapshot of all the activities. You can include the proponent contact as well, and then the operational zones. The second section is your activity information. So based on the application type and the activities you indicated are required for your application, and also what you've uploaded spatially, the system will organize it in the activity information here. And then when you click through the application, the activity information, the tabs going on the front here, it's always going to be activity overview and then activity details. And the third tab, activity land details, are based on what you've uploaded spatially. So that's consistent throughout all the activities here. And then the third section is your application information. So all of these tabs here are enabled for you to click through. And then again, based on what you've uploaded spatially, you may not be required to complete that particular tab, but the system takes that guesswork out for you. It will display a message indicating that this particular section is not required. And we went through the administrative tab and land, forestry, so on and so forth for the application information tabs. Now we're going to jump into how to save, validate, submit, and print applications. Does anybody have any particular questions on any of these tabs that they wanted to bring up before I jump to the next section? Okay, so on each of the tabs, as you can see, you have a save and validate link in the blue bar here, and it's everywhere. One thing to note is when you change tabs, if you have inputted some information but have not saved, you will lose it. So get used to saving and save frequently so you don't lose your data. So for instance, if I'm here, I'm going to put in some, this is my activity description, for instance. If I've input it there and I don't hit save and I click away and I click back, my information won't be there. So just make sure that before you click away, you're saving frequently to ensure that your data is not lost. So it's just an example here. I'm going to save. And once you save, the system will give you a save successfully message at the top right-hand corner there. So just that's how you save, and you should be saving on each page that you're on. And then, so just a quick question here, is there a delay between saving and validation? No, but I wanted to know, what do you mean by delay? If you wanted to elaborate that on that, Mark. The system will save, and then once it's done, it will give you a confirmation message. So in that sense, there's that type of delay, but unless you're meaning something else, then let me know. But basically, as soon as you hit save, the system will save that information immediately and give you a confirmation that the data has been saved. And then in terms of validating, you have two. So Mark, before I move on, if I haven't answered your question, just feel free to, I saved information and the validation doesn't show it as being entered. Okay, so perfect segue. So saving and validating is completely separate. So you want to save the information, but the reason why it's separated is that, let's say you had all this information and you know it's not complete yet. That's why validating and save is considered separate, because saving will allow you to input the data and you know it's not complete yet, instead of consistently seeing all of the error messages while you're saving and validating. That's why the functionality was separated out. So when you validate the page, the system will validate what's required based on the current page that you're on. So when I select validate page here, the system displays all of the required fields. And I could save, and the system will show me my save successfully, but not display all of the error messages. So that's why it was separated out. However, if you have completed everything, so let's just go through the example here. Yeah, Mark, we'll go over that one in just 1 second here. So let's say, put in the information here. I'm just gonna hit validate page. Change this to no. All right, so now that I've validated the page and everything that is required has been done, when I validate it successfully, it will save at the same time. So if you've completed the page and you have no errors and you validate page, at that point, the system will save the data, so you don't have to save again. And you see that in the message here that says, well, details was validated and saved successfully. If, however, you validated the page and there are errors, then it would display there and the data is not saved. So just as a takeaway though, make sure you save frequently, but when you're validating the page and everything is done correctly, it would also save for you. So there are a couple of areas that you can validate. The first one is what we went through, is validating the page, and it validates only on the current page that you're on. You can also validate the entire application as well. So just alluding to Mark's question here, using validate in the top left-hand corner, they're two separate things. So validate page, again, just to reiterate, is you're validating only on what page you're on. And by clicking on the application menu here and selecting validate, this will validate your entire application. So if I select yes, the system is going to go through all of the application requirements and identify what's left to be done or what's incorrect. And it would denote all of the areas that are not done in a red icon here. And anything that has been done correctly or is complete will be denoted by a green icon here. So this is considered your application validation, and it's separate from validating the page, because when you're validating the page, it will only identify what's required on the current page you're on, whereas this functionality identifies what's required for the entire application. And this is not related to saving at all. So this is just functionality to identify what's left to do, but it does not save the data. And then any areas that are identified with the red icon here, the sections are links. So when you click on it, you can click on agriculture, and then it would identify, hey, this is not done because you need to put your rationale based on how you've answered these questions here. And then once I complete my rationale, for an example, I'm going to hit save. I'm going to also validate my page, and then I get my confirmation that this page is now good to go. And if I were to return back to the application and validation there, my agriculture now is updated to a green check mark or a green icon with a white check mark, indicating that this section is good to go. Another thing to note as well is this overview tab here. So this overview tab is displayed for you once you've generated the application validation at least once. So if you have not generated the application validation, so what that means is if you haven't gone to this section here and selected yes, when you go back, sorry, it's just loading. When you go back to the section for agriculture, let's say for instance, when you click on overview, this gives you a snapshot of what you saw when you're validating the entire application. So this link here is on every single tab, and it's helpful as a quick snapshot so you don't always have to go back. And so for instance, if I were to expand this, I now know that, okay, archaeology isn't good. I need to complete my CNN. First Nations isn't completed, and forestry. So this snapshot is the same as what you saw in the application validation there. So this is just a quick overview so you can see what's left, and it's on every single tab or page for you to quickly take a look at as well. But keep in mind that unless you validated the application at least once, that this overview won't be available. So what we've gone over so far is saving. So the takeaway from there is making sure you're saving frequently and before you navigate away from the page. You can validate the page as well, and this gives you a snapshot or provides you information on what's required on the current page you're on. And validate page is different from the validate that you see up here. So when you validate the application itself, this gives you a snapshot of what's required for the entire application. And this is different than validate page that you were on. And then once you complete the application validation, you can access this on every single tab, and it will provide you a quick overview on what's left over. And anything that's good to go will be denoted with a green icon and a white check mark, and anything that's not complete is denoted with a red icon and a white exclamation mark. So you know that this area needs some attention. It's not ready for submission yet. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions on that front? Okay. So it is required for you to validate the entire application before submitting. So I'm just going to go back to this left application menu here. So to submit your application, you're going to select on the top left-hand corner of the application menu and select Submit. But in this case, if you haven't validated your application and completed everything that's there, you cannot submit. So I can't click on it at all. I would have to not only run my validate application, but I will also have to ensure that everything's complete with all green check marks before I can submit. But basically, to submit your application, you would just navigate to your application menu on the top left-hand corner and select Submit once your application has been validated successfully and there are no errors and all sections are completed. We went over validating the application. The third functionality that's listed in your application menu is discard. And what this allows you to do is to basically delete the draft application that you're working on. This functionality is only made available if you have not submitted your application. So in cases where you've submitted your application, or if the application has gone through a revision or your application has been approved, after you submit the application, any point after that, you cannot discard. So you can only discard applications that are truly in draft. After that point, you'd have to get in touch with the commission and withdraw your application if required. So the fourth functionality that's listed here is print application. So you can, by generating this print functionality here, the system is going to generate a PDF for all of the information that has been saved in your application, and this gives you the ability to download, and then you can print or view. And then this just gives you a snapshot of what has been included in your application here in PDF report. All right, so any of these functions that we discussed here, so validating the application as a whole, submitting, printing applications, and discarding applications, are made available in the top left-hand corner in the application menu here. All right, so we're going to jump into attachments now. So attachments are all housed in the application information section, and it's in this tab here, attachments. So anytime that you've uploaded an attachment in the system, it's going to be displayed here for you. So I'll do an So there are two types of attachments that you can include in the system. So one is attachments that are mandatory, and what that means is you basically have the field here, and then you have the upload button. Conditional attachments are attachments that are required based on how you answered a question. So for example, in this case here, project description attached, I have a button here that I can select yes or no, and by selecting no, the upload functionality is now not displayed for me, it's gone. So I'm indicating to the system I'm not going to upload a project description. But as you can see here, the difference between this guy, the project description attached versus the piping and instrumentation diagram, is that the piping and instrumentation diagram does not have a button here. So it's denoted as a mandatory attachment. I need to include it, whereas conditional attachments are similar to this. So based on a question on how I've indicated, I may or may not need an attachment, and that's up to you to include. So how you attach or upload an attachment, you're going to click upload and select choose. And you're going to locate a document that you can upload. And in AMS, the documents that are supported are PDF, Word, and Excel. I can't remember the file size limit, but there is also a limit to the size as well, and we can find that out and get back to you on that. I will find, let's see. So once you find the document, you're going to click upload, and then it's going to populate into the system here for you. And by clicking on the X, you can remove it, or you can upload additional ones. So an example here is you can upload multiple attachments, but you do have to do it one at a time. You cannot select multiple attachments and include all at once. So if I were to do that, like what I mean by that is selecting multiple here, you can't. It's only one at a time. So now that I've uploaded documents here, I'm going to save. The system shows you a save successfully message, and it's saved here. Now if I navigate to the attachments, the lines are inserted here for a review as well. So I know that I've uploaded a piping and instrumentation diagram for my pipeline project, and here's the attachment file name and the upload date. And then based on the attachments that I've uploaded, I can change the name by clicking on the pencil icon here and updating the name. And then I can also download as well or remove. And then again, just echoing, making sure that you're saving frequently. So based on what I've updated here, I'm going to click save. Something to note as well, if you're uploading, let me give you an example that would be. Okay, so in this case, we're going to show you another example where it's a conditional requirement or a conditional attachment. So in this case, I've indicated that I have received approval, and I'm going to upload a document here. I'm going to hit save. And let's say I change these questions, and now I don't have that upload anymore. You can see based on, I've changed this one to no, and now I don't have those series of questions below there, and I have a different attachment. If I save this instance and I validate the page, it will validate that these questions are here, but if I go back to the attachments, I still have the attachment based on what I've uploaded previously. Go validate my application. So this is a bad example, but for based on how you answer certain questions, if you've uploaded your document and you change your question, the system will validate that the document is no longer required and you need to update your question there. So let me see if I could do it in this case here. Upload my purchase attachment. So in this case, it does describe an attachment has been uploaded. However, based on the response selected, the attachment is no longer required. Please change the response or remove the attachment. So in this case, you have to remove it if I'm not going to upload my project description. So that's just how attachments work, and the difference between conditional attachments and mandatory attachments. Conditional attachments are only required based on how you've answered the particular question, whereas mandatory attachments, you don't have that button, but you have to upload. And any attachments that you've uploaded and saved on the page will be included in the attachment section there for you. Donna, is there anything you wanted to add on that front for attachments?
No, I think you covered it. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm just going to go back to the dashboard here. And we're going to go over some of the application statuses as well, because that has come up. So we briefly talked about it in the beginning, where you have an in-progress application, and the status is denoted by this icon here. So all of the status available that would be displayed on your dashboard, you would have in progress, draft. You'd also have submitted. Let's maybe, I can't submit this one, but you'd have submitted, and then you'd have in review, you'd have in revision, approve, refuse, and then also the last status is timed out. And there has been questions on what the timed out status is. So if you've created an in progress or a draft application, and let's say you have not touched this application for three months. And by that, I mean you haven't opened the application, you haven't saved any of the data, it's just been sitting on your dashboard for 3 months. The system will then update this application as timed out. And if the application remains in the timed out status for 6 months, then it would be removed from your dashboard. So timed out status is just indicating to you that this application hasn't been worked on for the last 3 months and is marked for deletion in 6 months. So let's say you found an application on your dashboard with timed out status, and you realize, hey, no, I don't want this to be deleted, and it should stay in my dashboard. If you click on that timed out application and you input some details and you save the data, the application status should then change back to in progress draft, and then the timer will start again. So that doesn't mean timed out applications are forever gone. If you see an application that's timed out, you can flip it back to in progress draft by simply going into the application. So that means clicking on the application number and including some details and saving the data. That should trigger the application status to change from from timed out back to in progress draft. And then the other status is submit. It's a green icon with an S, and that just means that you've successfully submitted this into the OGC for review. The next status is in review, so that's an orange circle with a black R, and that means that review has commenced on the particular application. If the application has been set back to in revision, then you're going to see a white triangle with an orange background, and that just means that now this application is ready for you to work on, but it does require revisions. And then the other application statuses thereafter is just approved and refused, and that's self-explanatory. It's just if it's been approved or refused by the commission, you'll see those icons there again. But again, the dashboard provides hover over hints, so you don't need to remember all of that. If you're seeing a different icon in your dashboard, all you need to do is simply hover over the icon, and then it will display the corresponding status there for you. All right, so that's the status of applications, including timed out. The next piece, I'll flip it back to Donna. She's just going to talk about amendments and that process there.
Yes, so we're going to talk about, tomorrow we're going to talk about the amendment, the entire amendment process, but just generally we get a lot of questions about what can and cannot be amended. And the real simple answer is that when you start an application, like what Tammy has gone through, and it goes through the whole process and eventually gets approved, the application number, we refer to it as an AD number. After approval, it becomes a determination number. And so any of the activity that was authorized under that application determination number is what can be amended. The simple answer is that when you have an OGA activity, you can amend your OGA activity to add stream crossings, short-term water use, or associated oil and gas activities. You cannot amend OGA activities to add new OGA activities. Does anyone have any questions about that? If not, I will pass it back to Tammy.
Awesome. So I'm just answering Mark's question here. He had a quick question about, does in revision change to in review once all information is updated, or does it always stay in revision? In revision only stays in that status until you've submitted the application. Once you've submitted the application, the status will update as applicable. So once review has started, it would update to in review. Arlene had a question here. What if you want to add a new pipeline in an existing right-of-way, meaning no new lands required, but a new segment number? So Arlene will be covering the session in the session tomorrow with amendments in particular. Yes, you can do an amendment to add a new segment, but you can't do an amendment to, add a brand new pipeline project, for instance. And we'll be covering those details for an amendment in tomorrow's session. So hopefully you're going to make it. All right. So just a recap of what we've covered so far in this morning session. We looked at how you get access into the system. So the two security rights you can obtain to get into AMS is the application security role and the surveyor role. And based on which security right you do get, that gives you the ability to either be able to create an application or only have access to the application analysis tool. We also looked at how do you plan and create applications. So we looked at how you upload spatial data in the application analysis tool and how you were able to create applications both from the application analysis tool and create the application from the dashboard. And then also we went over how new OGA and new NEBs are mutually exclusive application types. So that means you can't mix and match activities from each of those application types into one. And then also once you create the application package, meaning you went through the 3 steps of selecting the application type, the proponent, and the application description. If at that point you realize that you should have selected a new OGA instead of a new NEB, you would have to discard your application and start over because there is no ability within the application details to change the application type at that point. Donna also talked about the importance of communication between parties, so ensuring that what's required as part of the shapefiles are effectively communicated to the land agents, for instance. This will help prevent the number of revisions as well as the number of iterations that will be required when preparing the shapefiles that are required to upload into the applications, because you can see that the system relies heavily on the shapefiles, so it's important to ensure that the gaps in communication are closed so that you're getting the correct shapefiles required. We also looked at how you upload spatial data and how these values are populated into the system. So anywhere that you see a globe, that's a spatial component to it. So on the dashboard, anytime you see a gray globe, that's going to be a map, and anytime you see a green globe within the application, that means this field has been spatially derived for you and pre-populated into the system. We looked at the numbering system, and the key takeaway there is that the system always generates the activity identifiers upon spatial upload. So if you've uploaded multiple times, you're going to get new activity identifiers. So as a recommendation, Donna mentioned that you should reference the application number, as this doesn't change, but the activity identifiers will. And that just segues into the documentation information references for engagement. Again, because of the activity identifiers all potentially changing when you're uploading spatial, it's important to reference the application number instead, because that will stay static until the application has been a decision has been rendered on the application. We then also looked at how you navigate around the system, and in particular the application. So everything on the left-hand side in the application is considered your navigation panel. The functions and how you submit, validate, print, and discard an application is found on the top left-hand corner in your application menu here. Otherwise, everything else is pretty straightforward on the left-hand side. So it's organized by overview, activity information, and application information. And when you're validating the page versus validating the application, they're two completely different, because the application validation validates your entire application, whereas validating the page only validates on what current page that you're on. And then we also looked at attachments. So it's really important to understand mandatory attachments versus conditional attachments. So based on how you've answered certain questions, you may or may not be required to upload a document. If, however, you've uploaded a document and have changed your question, when you're validating the application, the system will identify, hey, you've uploaded this but changed your question. So you need to look at how you've answered that certain question and remove the attachment as applicable. We then went into application statuses as well. So on the dashboard, you're going to find the application status column, and by hovering over certain icons, you'll see what those statuses are. One thing to note is timed out application. So if you've created an application and have not worked on that application for 3 months, the status will be updated to timed out. However, if you didn't want the status changed to timed out, just go into the application, save some data, and the application status should change back to in progress and draft. Any applications that have been timed out in the timed out status for 6 months will be marked for deletion. So that just means it's going to be removed from your dashboard and you won't be able to see it. And then for the questions pertaining to amendments, as a quick reminder, we're having the amendments session tomorrow. We're going to go over how to create an amendment and different types of scenarios for amendments as well. So any questions pertaining to that and anything that Donna kind of alluded to, please ensure that you're able to join us tomorrow as we'll go over those particular scenarios in tomorrow's session. So those are basically the items that we wanted to cover as part of the AMS basics session. Just an introduction on, how do you get into the system and how do you navigate through. There is a future release coming up shortly here, and the changes that are coming with the system has to do with how the page is displayed for spatially derived values versus if you needed to change those spatially derived values. So there's going to be more information coming up on that, and we'll just keep an eye out on what those changes are and how you would navigate through the system on that. And I think Catherine might have a couple of things to add on that front there.
There are changes coming to the system. We'll probably send a bulletin out around June 28th, just outlining the changes for this next release. And we're also going to have a manual online. So I would encourage you to read the bulletin when it comes out. And if you're not on our distribution list, you can email me and we'll get you added. And those changes will all be outlined in a click-by-click guide in the manual that will be on the website, and that'll be linked from the bulletin. So you'll be able to see what the changes are and how they're going to affect any applications that are in the system and any new applications. So does anyone have any further questions before we wrap things up? Feel free to ask if you have anything. Okay, well, thank you all for attending. We've actually recorded the session today, so we have one question from Carissa Lawrence. Will a location search be added to the system?
I think Donna might want to speak to this, but at this point, for the next future enhancement release, that item will not be included yet. But Donna, did you want to add anything to the location search?
Yeah, I can speak to that. It has been flagged as a future enhancement. I don't know when that will happen at this point. We have quite a few recommendations that have come up, and you know, as I normally tell other people as well, if you have suggestions or recommendations, you are more than welcome to forward them to our service desk request, and we make sure they get logged for, you know, upcoming enhancements. But searching by location is one that is on the list. Won't happen in the next release. Any other questions?
Mohammed just asked one. Can anybody get into the system? So I think he's asking for how to get access and security roles. Do you want to
sorry,
no, go ahead.
Can anyone get access into the system? There's a couple ways that you can get access into the system. If you want application security rates, the applicant must set you up. So in the case of you know, the demo today, BTS Oil and Gas Company, you would have to contact the BTS Oil and Gas Company, and they would have to give you application security rights in order to be able to access applications. The same thing happens with the application analysis tool for surveyors. They have to get access to get into the application analysis tool, though that access is granted by the company. So if you think you should have access to an application, you will have to contact the company and request access. It's their responsibility to grant access or not grant access.
Thanks, Donna. Any final questions before we wrap up? Also, just to reiterate, if anyone wants to come to the session tomorrow, which will largely be around amendments, they're more than welcome. Just I put the link to the registration in the chat, so please, you can still register and I can send you all the details for that. Donna, Mohammed's just asking a follow-up question. So consulting companies cannot?
Well, that's really up to the applicant. If the applicant wishes to grant application security rights to a consultant, that's their choice to do that. It's ultimately the applicant's application. So if BTS Oil and Gas Company wanted to grant access to a consultant or an environmental company or a surveyor or a land agent or an engineer of any kind. It's really up to the applicant to determine who they want to have access to their applications. Any other questions?
No problem. Well, thanks everybody for coming. Thanks to Tammy and Donna for talking us through the system. And feel free, if any questions come up later on, just feel free to shoot me an email. But thanks very much. And for those of you attending tomorrow, we'll see you then.